Let us look at the present perfect, the changeover from the active into passive. So we are going to do now sentences in present perfect. Present perfect. In the present perfect sentences, we're going to look at the changeover from the active into passive. Let's look at some sentences. The first sentence I have here is, Ashok has written this letter. Present perfect. Ashok has written this letter. And then when you change into passive, this letter, present perfect, has been written by Ashok. All right? Now, the first sentence I have here is, Ashok has written Ashok has written this letter. Present perfect. This letter. Ashok has written this letter, and that is in the active. What's happening? Ashok is written it. Active. So we are looking at the active voice in the first sentence. Active. Now, change over from the active into the passive. Now, has written. That's the verb. Now, let's look at change over. This letter has been written by Ashok. This letter. So, let's look at that. This letter, we're looking at present perfect. Has this letter, has been written by, Ashok. Okay? Now, the verb here is has been written, and it's in the passive voice. It's in the passive. Okay. Now, let's look at another sentence. In the second, we have, the children have eaten all the cakes. The children have eaten all the cakes. That's in the present perfect active voice. Have eaten. Now, when you change over from the active to the passive, then we say, all the cake has been eaten by the children. In the second sentence is, the children have eaten. They have eaten. The children have eaten all the cakes. All the cakes. And that is the present perfect, the children. What have they done? They have eaten all the cakes. Okay? They have eaten all the cake, and that's the active in the present perfect tense. Okay. Next, let us change into passive. Note the change from the active in the present into the passive. You will say, all the cakes have been eaten. All the cakes have been eaten by the children. have been eaten. All the cakes have been eaten by the children. By the children. Now, that's changing over from the active into the passive. Now, look at the verb here. Have been eaten. All the cakes have been eaten. That's in the passive voice. Passive. I'll give you another sentence now. Third sentence. Has Ashok written this letter? Has Ashok written this letter? And into the passive. Has this letter been written by Ashok? Okay. Has this letter? Has Ashok written this letter? Has Ashok written? Has Ashok written this letter? That's the active one. Okay? Written. Has Ashok written this letter? Active. Now, when you change over the active into the passive, the question goes like this. Has this letter been written by Ashok? Been written by Ashok? And that's in the passive voice. Okay? Been written. That's a verb. Passive. The passive voice. All right? Now, we have one more last sentence to look at and practice. Fourth one. Have the children eaten all the cakes? Have the children eaten all the cakes? All the cakes? And the verb here is eaten. And that's in the active voice. And when we change over the active into the passive, let's look at it. Have all the cakes been eaten by the children? Have all the cakes been eaten by the children? By the children? Question. And that's in the passive. And look at the verb been eaten. And that's in the passive. Now, what have we done now? We are looking at the changeover from the active into the passive in present perfect. Now, Ashok has written this letter, active and present perfect. This letter has been written by Ashok, passive. change, we are looking at the, note the change, the active voice into the passive voice. Second sentence. The children have eaten all the cakes. Present perfect. Then into the passive, all the cakes have been eaten by the children. Passive. And the third, in the present perfect, has Ashok written this letter? Active. We're changing over. Has this letter been written by Ashok? In the passive. And finally, in the present perfect, we have the children eaten all the cakes? Active. And change over. Have all the cakes been eaten by children? Passive voice. So we learned now in the present perfect to change over the active into the passive.